The automatic doors of Metropolitan General Hospital slid open with a soft whoosh. Dr. Amara Johnson stepped out into the cool evening air and took a deep breath. Her whole body ached. 14 hours. That was how long she had been on her feet today. Her blue scrubs were wrinkled and had a small coffee stain on the left sleeve. Her natural hair was pulled back in a simple bun that had become messy hours ago. All she wanted was to go home, take a hot shower, and sleep. She walked across the sidewalk toward the parking garage. Her black leather bag hung heavy on her shoulder, filled with medical journals she probably would not read tonight. Her feet hurt in her comfortable sneakers. She thought about the patients she had seen today. There was the little boy with the broken arm who had been so brave. The elderly woman with pneumonia, who reminded her of her own grandmother. The teenager who came in after a car accident. Days like this reminded her why she became a doctor, but they also reminded her how tired a person could get. The parking garage was quiet. Most of the day shift workers had left hours ago. Her car was on the second level, right where she had parked it that morning when the sun was just coming up. The concrete walls made every sound echo. Her footsteps seemed loud in the empty space. A few fluorescent lights flickered overhead. She reached into her bag and pulled out her car keys. There it was. Her car. A sleek black Mercedes sedan. It was beautiful and expensive, yes, but she had worked hard for it. Years of medical school. Years of residency working crazy hours for little pay. Years of building her career. She had earned every single thing she owned. The car was one of the few luxuries she allowed herself. She pressed the button on her key fob and heard the satisfying beep and click of the doors unlocking. She was reaching for the door handle when she heard a voice behind her. "Excuse me. Stop right there." Amara turned around. A police officer was walking toward her quickly. He was a white man, maybe in his late 30s or early 40s. His uniform was neat and pressed. His hand rested on his belt near his weapon. His face was hard and suspicious. His badge read Mitchell. "Yes, officer?" Amara said. "Can I help you?" "What are you doing with that vehicle?" Officer Mitchell asked. His tone was not friendly or polite. It was accusatory. Amara felt a familiar tightness in her chest. She had felt this feeling before. Too many times before, but she kept her voice calm and steady. "I'm getting into my car. I just finished my shift at the hospital." Mitchell looked at her scrubs, then at the expensive car, then back at her face. His expression did not change. "This is your car?" "Yes, sir. It's my car." Amara tried to keep the tiredness out of her voice. She just wanted to go home. "Uh-huh." Mitchell crossed his arms. "You work at the hospital?" "Yes, I'm a doctor. I've been working since 6 this morning." Amara shifted her bag on her shoulder. It suddenly felt even heavier. A doctor. Mitchell said the word like he did not believe it. "This hospital has been having problems with car break-ins. Vehicle theft. People who don't belong here trying to steal from the parking garage. I understand that, officer. But I do belong here. This is my car and I work here." Amara kept her tone respectful but firm. "Do you have identification?" Mitchell asked. "Of course." Amara reached slowly into her bag. She had learned long ago to move carefully and announce what she was doing when dealing with police officers. "I'm reaching into my bag for my wallet." "Is that okay?" Mitchell nodded but watched her hands carefully. Amara pulled out her wallet. Inside was her driver's license, her medical license, several credit cards in her name, and her hospital identification badge with her photo and the title, "Attending Physician," clearly printed on it. She held out her driver's license to Mitchell. He took it and barely glanced at it. This could be fake. Amara felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. "It's not fake. That's my legal driver's license. My name is Dr. Amara Johnson. Would you like to see my medical license as well? Or my hospital badge?" "What I'd like," Mitchell said slowly, "is for you to explain what you're really doing with this car. How does someone who looks like you afford a car like this?" There it was. The thing he was not quite saying but was definitely thinking. Someone who looks like you. Amara knew exactly what he meant. A black woman in scrubs standing next to an expensive car. In his mind, these things did not fit together. They could not possibly fit together. So she must be a criminal. "I afford this car because I'm a trauma surgeon and I work very hard," Amara said. Her voice was still calm, but there was steel in it now. "I've shown you my identification. I've explained who I am. I would really like to go home now." "I don't think so." Mitchell stepped closer. "Something doesn't add up here. I'm going to need you to wait here while I check out your story. Check out my story. Amara could not keep the disbelief out of her voice now. Officer Mitchell, I have shown you my identification. You can see my hospital badge right here. She pulled the badge from her bag and held it up. Her photo was right there. Her name was right there. The hospital logo was right there. Mitchell barely looked at it. Those can be fake too. You'd be surprised what criminals can do these days. I am not a criminal. Amara's voice was louder now. A few other people in the parking garage turned to look. I am a doctor who just worked a 14-hour shift and wants to go home. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Mitchell put his hand near his radio. Getting aggressive is not going to help your situation. I am not being aggressive. I am being rightfully frustrated. Amara took a breath. She needed to stay calm. She knew how these situations could go wrong. She had treated too many people in her emergency room who had encounters with police that went bad. Officer Mitchell, please. Just look at my identification properly. Call the hospital if you need to verify, but I have done nothing wrong. Let me see the vehicle registration, Mitchell demanded. Amara turned back to her car. It's in my glove compartment. I need to open the car door to get it. Hold on. Mitchell moved closer. Don't open that door yet. How do I know this is really your car? How do I know you're not trying to break into it? Amara pressed her key fob again. The car beeped and the lights flashed. Because I have the keys. Because the car responds to my key. Because my name is on the registration. Officer, this is getting ridiculous. I'll decide what's ridiculous. Mitchell's face was red now. I'm trying to do my job here. We've had multiple reports of thefts in this area. A suspicious person near an expensive vehicle late at night. That's something I need to check out. Suspicious. Amara repeated the word. I'm suspicious because I'm black and standing next to a nice car. That's what you mean, isn't it? Don't make this about race. Mitchell pointed his finger at her. This is about a potential crime. Don't try to turn this into something it's not. Then what is it about? Amara asked. You've seen my identification. You've seen that the car responds to my key. You've seen my hospital badge. What exactly makes me suspicious? Mitchell did not answer. Instead, he reached for his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need backup at Metropolitan General Hospital parking garage, level 2. I've got a suspicious person possibly attempting vehicle theft. Amara could not believe what she was hearing. You're calling for backup? Officer Mitchell, this is absolutely unnecessary. I have committed no crime. Let me do my job, ma'am. Mitchell's hand moved closer to his weapon belt. I need you to step away from the vehicle and keep your hands where I can see them. People were definitely watching now. A few hospital workers had stopped on their way to their own cars. Someone was holding up a phone, probably recording. Amara felt humiliation wash over her. She was a respected surgeon. She saved lives. And here she was, being treated like a criminal in front of her workplace. But she was also smart enough to know that arguing with an officer who had already made up his mind could be dangerous. Very dangerous. So she stepped away from her car and kept her hands visible. Her medical bag slipped off her shoulder and hit the concrete with a thud. I want to be very clear, Amara said loudly, making sure anyone watching could hear. I am Dr. Amara Johnson. I work at this hospital. That is my car. I have shown this officer my identification and my hospital credentials. I have committed no crime. I am being detained for no reason other than the color of my skin. That's not true, Mitchell snapped. Stop trying to make this about race. But Amara saw the looks on the faces of the people watching. They knew. They could see exactly what this was about, and she hoped that if things went wrong, there would be witnesses who could tell the truth about what happened here tonight. The sound of sirens cut through the quiet parking garage. 2 more police cars pulled up quickly, their lights flashing blue and red against the concrete walls. Amara stood very still, her hands at her sides where everyone could see them. Her heart was pounding, but she forced herself to stay calm. Getting emotional would only make things worse. She had seen enough in her emergency room to know that. 2 officers stepped out of their cars. One was an Asian American man who looked to be in his late 20s. His name tag said Chen. The other was a Latino officer, older, maybe in his 40s. His badge read Rodriguez. They both looked alert and ready for trouble. Officer Mitchell walked over to them quickly, leaving Amara standing alone next to her car. Amara watched as Mitchell talked to the other officers. He was gesturing at her, Then at the car, his hands moving quickly as he explained the situation. She could not hear everything he was saying, but she caught phrases like uncooperative and suspicious behavior and possible vehicle theft. Each word felt like a punch. He was creating a narrative, a story where she was the criminal and he was the hero doing his job. Officer Chen looked over at Amara. His face was neutral, but something in his eyes seemed uncertain. He looked at her scrubs, her hospital bag on the ground, her tired face. Rodriguez was harder to read. He kept his expression blank and professional as Mitchell continued talking. "I'm telling you," Mitchell said loudly enough for Amara to hear now. "Something's not right here. She claims to be a doctor, but she's being evasive, won't cooperate, got real aggressive when I asked simple questions. That was not true." Amara knew it was not true. The people watching knew it was not true. But the other officers had not been there. They only had Mitchell's word. And the word of a fellow officer carried weight. Chen walked over to Amara. His approach was different from Mitchell's, less aggressive. "More careful. Ma'am, I'm Officer Chen. Can you tell me what's happening here?" Finally, someone willing to listen. Amara took a breath. "Officer Chen, my name is Dr. Amara Johnson. I work at this hospital as a trauma surgeon. I just finished a 14-hour shift. That's my car, the Mercedes. I was about to drive home when Officer Mitchell stopped me and accused me of trying to steal it. Do you have identification?" Chen asked. His tone was polite. "Yes." I showed Officer Mitchell my driver's license, my medical license, and my hospital identification badge. He said they could all be fake. Amara heard the frustration in her own voice and tried to control it. "I have the car keys. The car responds to my key fob. The registration is in the glove compartment with my name on it. I don't know what else I can possibly show him to prove this is my car." Chen nodded slowly. "Can I see your ID?" Amara picked up her bag from the ground and pulled out her wallet again. She handed Chen her driver's license and her medical license. He looked at them carefully. Actually looked at them, read them, compared the photo to her face. "These look legitimate," Chen said quietly. He glanced back at Mitchell, who was now talking to Rodriguez. "That's because they are legitimate," Amara said. "Officer Chen, I understand there have been thefts in this area. I understand you all need to be careful, but I have done nothing wrong. I just want to go home." "Dr. Johnson," Chen started to say, but Mitchell's voice cut through the conversation. "Chen, what's she telling you?" Mitchell strode over. "Don't let her play victim here." "I know what I saw." "What did you see exactly?" Chen asked. The question seemed genuine, not challenging, but Mitchell's face darkened anyway. "I saw someone suspicious near an expensive vehicle," Mitchell said firmly. "Someone who couldn't give me a straight answer about what they were doing." "I gave you a straight answer," Amara said, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. "Multiple times. You chose not to believe me. See?" Mitchell pointed at her. "Aggressive. Confrontational. That's the behavior of someone with something to hide." More people had gathered now. Hospital workers on their way to the parking garage had stopped to watch. A few were definitely recording on their phones. Amara saw Dr. Marcus Peterson, the chief of surgery, pushing through the small crowd. Relief flooded through her. Peterson knew her. They had worked together for years. "What's going on here?" Peterson demanded. He was a tall white man in his 50s with gray hair and the kind of commanding presence that came from years of running operating rooms. "Why are police officers surrounding Dr. Johnson?" Mitchell turned to face Peterson. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. Please step back. It absolutely concerns me. Dr. Johnson is one of my best surgeons. She works at this hospital." Peterson moved closer to Amara. "Amara, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Marcus," Amara said, though she did not feel fine at all. "Officer Mitchell seems to think I'm stealing my own car." Peterson's face turned red with anger. "That's absurd. I've known Dr. Johnson for 7 years. She's a highly respected trauma surgeon. This is her car. I've seen her drive it to work dozens of times. And you are?" Mitchell asked, his tone dismissive. "Dr. Marcus Peterson. I'm the chief of surgery at this hospital." Peterson pulled out his own hospital badge and held it up. "I can verify Dr. Johnson's identity and employment." "Is that sufficient?" "Sir, with all respect, you could just be covering for a colleague," Mitchell said. "Criminal networks often work together. They vouch for each other." "Criminal networks?" Peterson's voice was loud now. "Are you serious? You're suggesting that Dr. Johnson, who saves lives every single day, who has dedicated her entire adult life to medicine, is part of a criminal network? I'm suggesting, Mitchell said slowly, that things aren't always what they seem, and you're not helping by interfering with a police investigation. This isn't an investigation, Peterson shot back. This is racial profiling, plain and simple. If Dr. Johnson were white, would you have stopped her? Would you have accused her of stealing her own car? Don't make this about race, Mitchell said for the second time that night. His hand moved to his handcuffs. And if you don't step back right now, I'll charge you with obstruction. Chen moved closer to Mitchell and spoke quietly. Maybe we should just run the vehicle registration. Check if it matches her license. That would clear this up quickly. Mitchell glared at him. I'll decide how to handle this situation, Officer Chen. But Chen was already reaching for his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 15. Can you run a registration check for me? He read off the license plate number from Amara's Mercedes. Mitchell looked angry that Chen had gone over his authority, but he did not stop him. They all waited. The crowd of hospital workers waited. Peterson stood protectively next to Amara. Rodriguez watched everything with his unreadable expression. After a moment, the dispatcher's voice came through the radio. Unit 15, go ahead. I need the registered owner information for that vehicle, Chen said. Stand by. There was a pause. Then the dispatcher's voice came back, but it sounded different now. Tense. Careful. Unit 15, can you confirm your location? Metropolitan General Hospital parking garage level 2, Chen said. Another pause. Longer this time. Then the dispatcher said, Officer Chen, can you put your senior officer on the line? Chen looked at Mitchell and held out his radio. She wants to talk to you. Mitchell snatched the radio from Chen's hand. This is Officer Mitchell. What's the problem? Officer Mitchell. The dispatcher's voice was very careful now. Can you please confirm that you are currently detaining the registered owner of vehicle license plate? She read off the number. I'm not detaining anyone, Mitchell said, though that was not entirely true. I'm investigating suspicious activity involving this vehicle. Why? Sir, the dispatcher said, and now there was clear tension in her voice. I need you to stand by. Captain Morrison is being notified and is en route to your location. ETA 3 minutes. Mitchell's face showed confusion. Why is the captain coming? This is just a routine. Officer Mitchell, the dispatcher interrupted, which dispatchers almost never did. I need you to stand down and wait for Captain Morrison. That is a direct order. Do you understand? Mitchell's face went from confused to angry, to uncertain in the span of seconds. Understood. He lowered the radio. Everyone was staring at him now. Chen looked worried. Rodriguez had finally lost his neutral expression and looked concerned. Peterson seemed satisfied, like he knew something the officers did not. And Amara just felt tired. So very tired. What was that about? Rodriguez asked quietly. I don't know, Mitchell said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Must be protocol for high-value vehicles or something. But Amara saw the doubt in his eyes now. Something had shifted. The dispatcher's tone had been too urgent, too careful. Captains did not rush to parking garage investigations over suspected car theft. Not for just any car. Not for just any person. The 3 minutes felt like an hour. Nobody spoke. The watching crowd grew larger. More phones were out now recording. Amara noticed a news van pulling up on the street level. Someone must have called the media. Stories like this, police confronting black professionals, they got attention these days. Then they heard it. Another siren. A police car pulled up fast and Captain James Morrison stepped out. He was a black man in his 50s, tall and broad-shouldered, with gray at his temples and the kind of presence that made everyone stand straighter. His face was serious, very serious. He walked straight to Officer Mitchell. Mitchell, report. Mitchell straightened up. Captain, I was patrolling the area after reports of vehicle thefts. I observed this individual near an expensive vehicle and questioned her. She's been uncooperative and provided identification that could be falsified. I called for backup to properly investigate. Morrison's jaw tightened. Did you examine her identification? Yes, sir, but did you run the vehicle registration before calling for backup and escalating the situation? Mitchell hesitated. Officer Chen initiated that check just a few minutes ago. I see. Morrison turned to look at Amara. His expression was unreadable. Then he walked over to her. Ma'am, may I see your identification? Amara pulled out her wallet again. Her hands were shaking slightly now, from adrenaline and exhaustion and the sheer absurdity of the situation. She handed Morrison her driver's license and her medical license. Morrison looked at them carefully, very carefully. Then he looked at her face for a long moment. When he turned back to Mitchell, his expression had changed. Now Amara could read it clearly. It was anger. Cold, controlled, professional anger. "Officer Mitchell," Morrison said quietly. "Come here." Mitchell walked over. Morrison held up Amara's identification for him to see. "Did you actually read this?" "I glanced at it, sir." "You glanced at it?" Morrison's voice was dangerously calm. "Did you read the name? Did you look at the medical license and see what it says?" "Sir, identification can be faked." Morrison held up his phone. On the screen was a photo from a website. Amara recognized it. It was from the police department's internal site. The photo showed her standing at a podium with the city seal behind her. She was wearing a formal suit. She was giving a speech at the police academy about community relations and police reform initiatives. Morrison held the phone where Mitchell could see it clearly. "Officer Mitchell, let me introduce you to Dr. Amara Johnson." Mitchell stared at the phone in Captain Morrison's hand. His face had gone pale, his mouth opened but no words came out. He looked at the photo on the screen, then at Amara, then back at the photo. The silence stretched out. Everyone in the parking garage seemed to hold their breath. "Sir, I don't understand," Mitchell finally said. His voice was much quieter now. The aggressive certainty from before had vanished completely. Morrison's expression was ice cold. "What don't you understand, Officer Mitchell? The photo? The identification? Or the massive mistake you just made? Who is she?" Mitchell asked. Though Amara suspected he was starting to figure it out, Morrison turned the phone so everyone could see the screen. On it was an official photo from the city's website. Amara was standing behind a podium with the police department seal. The caption below read clearly, "Police Commissioner Dr. Amara Johnson addresses new recruits at the police academy on community policing and reform initiatives." "Officer Mitchell," Morrison said, his voice carrying across the parking garage. "Meet Police Commissioner Dr. Amara Johnson. She's been in charge of the entire police department for the past 8 months. The words hit like a physical blow. Mitchell took a step back. His face went from pale to gray. Officer Chen closed his eyes and put his hand over his face. Rodriguez let out a breath that sounded like a curse. The crowd of hospital workers reacted with gasps and murmurs. Someone laughed nervously. Several phones turned to capture Mitchell's reaction. That's not possible," Mitchell stammered. "The commissioner doesn't work at a hospital. She can't be—" "I am both," Amara said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it now. "I've been a trauma surgeon for 15 years. When the mayor asked me to take on the role of police commissioner, I agreed on the condition that I could continue working in the emergency room 1 or 2 days a week. Medicine is my first calling, Officer Mitchell. Reforming the police department is my second." Mitchell's hand shook slightly as he lowered it to his side. "Commissioner, I didn't know. You weren't in uniform. You didn't identify yourself. I showed you my identification multiple times," Amara said. Her exhaustion had transformed into something else now. Something sharper. "I showed you my driver's license with my name on it. I showed you my medical license. I showed you my hospital badge. You chose not to look at them properly. You chose not to believe me. You decided I was a criminal before you even spoke to me. That's not true. I was responding to reports of theft in the area." "Stop." Morrison's voice cut through Mitchell's excuse. "Just stop talking, Officer Mitchell." Morrison turned to Amara. His expression softened, though the anger was still there underneath. "Commissioner Johnson, I apologize on behalf of the entire department. This situation should never have happened." "No, Captain, it should not have." Amara picked up her medical bag from the ground where it had fallen. "But let's be very clear about something. This happened because Officer Mitchell saw a black woman standing next to an expensive car and immediately assumed I was a criminal. Not because of any actual suspicious behavior, not because I was doing anything wrong, but because of the color of my skin." "Commissioner, I swear that's not what this was." Mitchell started. "Then explain to me what it was," Amara said, turning to face him directly. "Explain to me why you barely glanced at my valid identification. Explain why you dismissed Dr. Peterson when he vouched for me. Explain why you called for backup when I had committed no crime. Explain why you threatened to arrest me for standing next to my own car in my own workplace parking lot after working a 14-hour shift saving lives. Mitchell had no answer. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. That's what I thought, Amara said. She turned to Chen. Officer Chen, you attempted to de-escalate this situation. You actually looked at my identification. You ran the vehicle registration. You tried to do the right thing. I won't forget that. Chen nodded, looking relieved but still uncomfortable. Thank you, Commissioner. Officer Rodriguez, Amara continued. You stayed silent and observed. You neither helped nor hindered. In the future, I expect my officers to speak up when they see something wrong happening. Silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Rodriguez shifted his weight. Yes, ma'am, understood. Morrison pulled a notebook from his pocket. Commissioner, I'll need to file a full report on this incident. With your permission, I'd like to collect statements from all witnesses. Good, Amara said. I want detailed statements from everyone who was present. I also want all body camera footage from all 3 officers. And Captain, I noticed several security cameras in this parking garage. Make sure we get that footage as well. All of it. Yes, ma'am. Morrison made notes quickly. Dr. Peterson stepped forward. Commissioner, I want to be very clear in my statement. Officer Mitchell's behavior was aggressive from the start. He refused to listen to reason. He dismissed valid identification and witnesses. This was racial profiling, pure and simple. I've watched this hospital's parking area for years, and I've never seen a white doctor questioned like this about their own vehicle. Thank you, Marcus, Amara said. Your statement will be important. Mitchell found his voice again, desperate now. Commissioner, please. Let me explain. I made a mistake, yes, but I was trying to do my job. We've had real thefts in this area. I was being vigilant. Vigilant, Amara repeated the word. Officer Mitchell, let me tell you about vigilance. Real vigilance involves actually looking at the evidence in front of you. Real vigilance means not letting your assumptions override the facts. Real vigilance requires treating every person with basic dignity and respect until they give you a reason not to. She took a step closer to him. Mitchell instinctively took a step back. You know what you did instead? Amara continued. You saw my skin color and decided I was a threat. You saw my expensive car and decided I must have stolen it because surely a black woman couldn't afford such a car legitimately. You saw my scrubs and assumed they were a disguise rather than the uniform of a doctor who just spent 14 hours saving lives. You made every single decision based on your prejudice, and then you called it police work. I wasn't thinking about race, Mitchell protested weakly. That's exactly the problem, Amara said. You weren't thinking about it consciously, which means it's even more deeply ingrained in you. You don't even see your own bias. You don't even recognize it for what it is. Morrison closed his notebook. Officer Mitchell, you are on administrative leave effective immediately. Turn in your badge and weapon to me right now. Mitchell's face showed shock. Sir, you can't. I absolutely can, Morrison said. And Commissioner Johnson can do even more than that. You're lucky she's a better person than you are. If someone had treated me the way you treated her, badge or no badge, I'd want more than just administrative leave. Mitchell slowly unclipped his badge from his uniform. His hands were shaking as he handed it to Morrison along with his service weapon. He looked like he might cry. Part of Amara almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But she had learned long ago that empathy did not mean tolerating injustice. Captain Morrison, Amara said, I want Officer Mitchell's complete service record on my desk by tomorrow morning. Every call he's responded to, every arrest he's made, every complaint that's been filed against him, every evaluation, everything. You'll have it, Morrison promised. I also want the records of his direct supervisors, Amara continued. Anyone who has overseen his work in the past 5 years. If this kind of behavior has been allowed to continue unchecked, I want to know why. Morrison made more notes. Understood. Amara turned to look at the crowd that had gathered. There were at least 30 people now, maybe more. Hospital workers, patients' families. People from the street who had seen the police lights and come to watch. Most of them were still holding up their phones, recording everything. I want everyone here to understand something, Amara said loudly enough for them all to hear. What happened here tonight happens every single day to black people across this country. We get stopped for existing. We get questioned for being in spaces that other people think we don't belong. We get treated as criminals until we prove otherwise, and sometimes even then. She paused, making eye contact with people in the crowd. I am lucky, she continued. I have education. I have status. I have a position of authority. When I revealed who I was, the situation changed immediately. But what about all the other black people who don't have those things? What about the black teenager who gets stopped on his way home from school? What about the black mother who gets pulled over for a traffic violation and ends up handcuffed on the side of the road in front of her children? What about the black man who gets shot because an officer feared for his life, even though the man was unarmed and complying? The crowd was completely silent now. Even Mitchell had stopped looking at his feet and was listening. "This isn't just about me," Amara said. "This is about every single person who doesn't look like what society expects them to look like. This is about a system that sees some people as automatically suspicious and other people as automatically trustworthy. And that system needs to change." She turned back to Morrison. "Captain, I'm going to use this incident as a teaching moment for the entire department. Not to humiliate Officer Mitchell, though he deserves humiliation, but to show every officer what unconscious bias looks like in action. I want this to be a case study in our training program." "That's a good idea," Morrison said. "I'll work with the training division to make it happen." Amara looked at Mitchell one more time. "Officer Mitchell, I hope you learn from this." "I truly do. Because if you can recognize your bias and work to overcome it, you might still be able to become the kind of officer this city deserves. But right now, you're exactly the kind of officer this city is trying to get rid of." Mitchell said nothing. There was nothing he could say. Amara picked up her car keys from where they had fallen on the ground. She pressed the button and heard the familiar beep of her car unlocking. "Captain Morrison, you have my contact information. I expect regular updates on this investigation. And I mean regular. This is now a priority case." Amara finally opened her car door and sank into the driver's seat. The leather was cool against her back. For a moment, she just sat there with her hands on the steering wheel, not moving. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, and exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Her whole body felt heavy. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of anger and frustration and the sheer unfairness of it all. She had been up since 5 in the morning. She had performed 2 emergency surgeries. She had diagnosed a rare condition that saved a child's life. She had held the hand of a dying patient and brought comfort to that patient's family. She had done good work. Important work. Work that mattered. And then she had been treated like a criminal in her own workplace parking lot. Amara started her car and drove home. The streets were mostly empty this time of night. Streetlights passed overhead in a steady rhythm. She turned on the radio but then turned it off again. She did not want music or news or talk shows. She just wanted silence, time to think, time to process what had just happened. When she reached her house in the quiet suburban neighborhood, she sat in her driveway for a few minutes before going inside. The house was dark, empty. She lived alone, which was usually fine, but tonight she wished someone was there. Someone to talk to, someone to be angry with, someone to remind her that she was valued and respected, and not the criminal that Officer Mitchell had assumed she was. Inside, she dropped her bag by the door and went straight to the bathroom. The hot shower she had been dreaming about all evening felt good, but it could not wash away what had happened. She stood under the water and let herself cry. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears mixing with the shower water. This was her private moment to feel everything she had held back in the parking garage. After the shower, she put on comfortable clothes and made tea. Her phone was buzzing constantly with messages and calls. The incident had already hit social media. Videos from the parking garage were being shared thousands of times. Her name was trending. The story was spreading fast. Police commissioner racially profiled by her own officer. Amara did not look at the videos or read the comments. Not tonight. Tonight she needed rest. Tomorrow would be busy enough. Tomorrow she would have to deal with the media, the mayor, the city council, the police union, and everyone else who would have opinions about what happened. Tonight was for her, but sleep did not come easily. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the encounter over and over. The look on Mitchell's face when he dismissed her identification. The way he had called for backup as if she was dangerous. The humiliation of standing in front of her colleagues while being treated like a criminal. The anger she felt was not just for herself. It was for every person who had experienced something similar, but did not have the power she had to demand accountability. Morning came too quickly. Amara woke up to her alarm at 6, feeling like she had barely slept. She made coffee and forced herself to eat breakfast even though she had no appetite. Then she put on her professional clothes, a dark blue suit, simple jewelry, her hair pulled back neatly. Today she was not Dr. Johnson, the surgeon. Today she was Commissioner Johnson, and she had work to do. Her phone rang as she was leaving the house. It was Mayor Patricia Williams. Amara, the mayor's voice was concerned. I saw the videos.
Are you okay?
I'm fine, Patricia, Amara said, though fine was not exactly accurate. This is unacceptable, Mayor Williams said firmly. One of our own officers treating you like that. I'm furious, so am I, Amara admitted. But I'm going to use this, Patricia. I'm going to make sure this becomes a turning point for real change in the department. What do you need from me? The mayor asked. Your support. This is going to get messy. The police union will defend Mitchell. The media will turn this into a circus. Some people will say I'm overreacting or playing the race card. I need to know you have my back. You have it, Mayor Williams said without hesitation. Completely. Whatever you need to do to fix this department, you do it. I hired you to make change, and this is exactly why. Thank you, Amara said. She meant it. At police headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. Officers who normally greeted her warmly seemed uncertain how to act. Some looked guilty, like they were personally responsible for Mitchell's actions. Others looked defensive, like they thought she was going to punish all of them for one officer's mistake. A few looked supportive, giving her nods of respect as she walked past. Captain Morrison was waiting in her office with a thick file folder. The complete record you requested on Officer Mitchell, he said, putting it on her desk. And, Commissioner, you should know. This isn't his first complaint. Amara was not surprised, but it still made her angry. Tell me. Morrison opened the folder. 3 previous complaints in the past 5 years, all involving racial profiling. 2 from traffic stops of black drivers, 1 from a stop-and-frisk situation with a Latino teenager. None of the complaints went anywhere. They were investigated and dismissed as unfounded or unsubstantiated. Who investigated them? Amara asked, though she could guess the answer. His supervisors at the time. Sergeant Kelly for the first 2, Lieutenant Barnes for the 3rd. Both are still with the department, Amara wrote down the names. Get me their records too. If they've been covering for Mitchell or dismissing legitimate complaints, I want to know about it. Yes, ma'am. Morrison paused. Commissioner, there's something else. The union representative called this morning. They want to meet with you about Mitchell's case. Of course they do, Amara said. The police union always defended officers, even when the officers were clearly in the wrong. It was their job technically, but it made real reform almost impossible. Set up a meeting. But make it clear that this incident is being investigated thoroughly. Mitchell's employment status will depend on what we find. They're not going to like that, Morrison warned. I don't care if they like it, Amara said flatly. I care about doing what's right. Her assistant knocked on the door. Commissioner, you have a press conference in 20 minutes. The media is already setting up in the conference room. Amara took a deep breath. Here we go, she thought. Time to face the world. The press conference room was packed. News cameras, reporters with notebooks and recorders, photographers. The mayor stood beside her at the podium, showing support. Captain Morrison stood behind them. The room quieted as Amara approached the microphone. Thank you all for coming, Amara began. I'm going to make a brief statement and then I'll take questions. She looked directly at the cameras. She knew that what she said right now would be heard across the city and maybe across the country. Last night I experienced something that far too many people in this city experience regularly. I was racially profiled by one of my own officers. After working a 14-hour shift as a trauma surgeon at Metropolitan General Hospital, I was stopped in the hospital parking garage and accused of attempting to steal my own vehicle. Despite showing proper identification multiple times, despite the testimony of witnesses who knew me, I was treated as a criminal suspect. Amara paused, letting her words sink in. Some people might say this was just a misunderstanding, a mistake, an officer being overly cautious. But let me be very clear. This was racial profiling. Officer Derek Mitchell saw a black woman standing next to an expensive car and immediately assumed criminal activity. He did not give me the benefit of the doubt that he would have given a white person in the same situation. He did not properly examine my identification. He escalated the situation unnecessarily, and when witnesses vouched for me, he dismissed their testimony. Reporters were scribbling notes frantically. Camera lights were bright in her face. What makes this situation even more disturbing, Amara continued, is that this is not Officer Mitchell's first complaint of racial profiling. He has 3 previous complaints on his record, all of which were dismissed or deemed unfounded by his supervisors. This pattern of behavior has been allowed to continue because the system failed to hold him accountable. She heard murmurs in the crowd. I am announcing today that Officer Derek Mitchell has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. That investigation will examine not only last night's incident, but also his entire service record and the handling of previous complaints against him. Additionally, I am ordering a review of all racial profiling complaints in the department over the past 10 years. I want to know how many were dismissed inappropriately. I want to know which supervisors failed to take these complaints seriously, and I want accountability at every level. Mayor Williams nodded in approval beside her. This incident has given me a unique perspective, Amara said. I experience firsthand what many of our citizens experience regularly. The frustration, the humiliation, the fear, the knowledge that no matter how educated you are, no matter how accomplished, no matter how many rules you follow, you can still be treated as a suspect simply because of the color of your skin. She gripped the podium, her emotion showing now. But I also have something that most people don't have, the power to demand change, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. In the coming weeks, I will be announcing comprehensive reforms to our police department's training, accountability measures, and complaint procedures. We will have mandatory implicit bias training for all officers. We will have stricter oversight of officers with multiple complaints. We will have a new civilian oversight board with real authority to investigate misconduct, and we will have body cameras on every officer, with footage that will be made available to the public in cases of alleged misconduct. The reporters started shouting questions before she even finished. The questions came fast and loud. Reporters raised their hands and shouted, trying to be heard over each other. Amara pointed to a woman in the front row from the local newspaper. Commissioner Johnson, do you believe Officer Mitchell should be fired? The reporter asked. That decision will be made based on the results of a thorough investigation, Amara replied. But I will say this. Any officer who cannot treat all citizens with equal respect and dignity has no place in this department. If the investigation confirms a pattern of racial profiling and misconduct, then yes, termination will be on the table. Another reporter shouted out. What about the police union? They're already saying you're being too harsh on Officer Mitchell. Amara had expected this question. The union's job is to represent their members. I understand that. But my job is to serve and protect all citizens of this city, and that includes protecting them from officers who abuse their authority. The union can defend Officer Mitchell all they want, but they cannot defend racial profiling. They cannot defend a pattern of complaints that were ignored. They cannot defend a system that protects bad officers at the expense of public trust. A male reporter stood up. Some people are saying you're only pushing for these reforms because you were personally affected. How do you respond to that? The question irritated Amara, but she kept her voice level. I was appointed as police commissioner specifically to reform this department. These changes were coming whether or not I personally experienced racial profiling. But yes, experiencing it firsthand has reinforced why this work is so urgent and necessary. Maybe more leaders should experience what ordinary citizens go through. Maybe then they'd understand why change can't wait. Commissioner, what do you say to officers who feel like they're being painted with the same brush as Officer Mitchell? Another reporter asked. This was important. Amara did not want good officers to feel attacked. I say this. If you're an officer who treats everyone with respect, who actually looks at evidence before making assumptions, who doesn't let bias influence your decisions, then you have nothing to fear from these reforms. In fact, you should welcome them. Bad officers make your job harder. They destroy the trust you work to build with the community. They put you at greater risk. Good officers should want bad officers weeded out. The press conference lasted another 30 minutes. Questions about Mitchell. Questions about the reforms. Questions about her dual role as doctor and commissioner. Questions about race relations in the city. Amara answered them all as honestly and directly as she could. When it was finally over, she went back to her office and closed the door. She sat at her desk and put her head in her hands for just a moment. Then she got back to work. There were emails to respond to, phone calls to return, meetings to attend, the investigation to oversee. By afternoon, the story had exploded across national media. Cable news channels were discussing it. Social media was on fire with opinions. Some people praised her. Some people criticized her. Some people said she was overreacting. Some people said she was being too soft on Mitchell. The internet had opinions about everything, as always. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "Amara, baby, I just saw you on television," her mother said. Her voice was worried. "Are you okay? Did that officer hurt you?" "I'm fine, Mom," Amara said. "He didn't hurt me, just humiliated me and made me angry." "I'm so proud of how you handled it," her mother said. "But I'm also so tired of this happening. You're a doctor. You're the police commissioner. And you still got treated like a criminal. When does it end?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out, Mom," Amara said softly. "That's what all these reforms are about. Making sure it ends." After she hung up, there was a knock on her door. Captain Morrison came in with another officer, a young black woman named Officer Taylor who worked in the training division. "Commissioner, Officer Taylor has an idea for the training program," Morrison said. "I think you should hear it." Officer Taylor looked nervous but determined. "Ma'am, I was thinking about what you said in the press conference, about using your incident as a teaching moment. What if we created a simulation based on what happened? Officers would play different roles. Some would be Officer Mitchell, some would be you, some would be the other officers. They'd act out the scenario, and then we'd break down every decision point, where things went wrong, what the officer should have done differently, how bias influenced his choices." Amara considered this. "That's actually an excellent idea. It's one thing to talk about bias in a classroom. It's another thing to actually experience it from multiple perspectives. We could also bring in the actual witnesses," Officer Taylor continued, gaining confidence. "Dr. Peterson and the other hospital staff who were there. They could talk about what they observed. It would make it more real." "Do it," Amara said. "Work with Captain Morrison to develop the program. I want this rolled out to every officer in the department within 6 months." "Yes, ma'am." Officer Taylor looked excited now. "Thank you for this opportunity." After they left, Amara turned to her computer and started reading through Mitchell's file more carefully. The pattern was clear. In his first few years on the force, he had been a decent officer. Good performance reviews. No complaints. But then something shifted. Maybe he got cynical. Maybe he fell in with other officers who had prejudices. Maybe his own bias, which had always been there, just got worse over time. The first complaint came 3 years ago. A black man named James Crawford had been pulled over for a supposedly broken taillight. Mitchell had made him get out of the car, searched him roughly, and made several racist comments according to Crawford's complaint. Mitchell's sergeant had investigated and found no evidence to support the claims. Case closed. The second complaint came a year later. A black woman named Shanice Williams had been stopped while walking in a mostly white neighborhood. Mitchell had demanded to know what she was doing there. He had searched her bag without consent. He had detained her for 30 minutes before letting her go. Again, the complaint was investigated. Again, it was dismissed. Mitchell said he was responding to reports of suspicious activity in the area. The third complaint was the most troubling. A 16-year-old Latino boy named Carlos Rodriguez had been stopped and frisked while walking home from school. Mitchell had pushed him against a wall and patted him down aggressively. The boy had been terrified. He had done nothing wrong. His mother had filed a complaint. Lieutenant Barnes had investigated and concluded that Mitchell had acted within policy for a stop and frisk in a high-crime area. 3 complaints. 3 investigations. 3 dismissals. And now a 4th incident, this time with the police commissioner herself. Amara made notes as she read. She would need to interview Crawford, Williams, and Rodriguez's mother. She would need to review the investigation files for each complaint. She would need to question the supervisors who had dismissed the complaints. This was going to be a thorough investigation. No stone left unturned. The police union representative called that afternoon. His name was Frank Delgado, and he had been representing officers for 20 years. He had a reputation for being tough and aggressive in defending his members. "Commissioner Johnson, we need to talk about Officer Mitchell," Delgado said. "No greeting. No pleasantries. Straight to business. I'm listening," Amara said. "The union believes you're treating him unfairly because of your personal involvement in the incident. You should have recused yourself from this investigation." Amara had expected this argument. "Mr. Delgado, I am the police commissioner. My job is to oversee the department and ensure accountability. The fact that I was personally involved gives me insight into what happened, not bias against Officer Mitchell. You held a press conference where you essentially convicted him before any investigation was complete, Delgado argued. You announced reforms as if he's already been found guilty. That's not fair process. I announced reforms that have been needed for a long time, Amara corrected. Officer Mitchell's case simply highlighted issues that already existed. And as for fair process, he will get a thorough investigation. He will have the opportunity to present his side. But fair process doesn't mean no consequences. We're prepared to fight this, Delgado warned. If you try to fire Mitchell, we'll file grievances. We'll go to arbitration. We'll take it to court if necessary. Do what you need to do, Mr. Delgado, Amara said calmly. I'm going to do what's right for this city. If that means a legal battle, so be it. After the call ended, Amara felt drained. This was going to be harder than she thought. The union would fight her every step of the way. Some officers would resent the reforms. The media would scrutinize every decision she made. And she still had to work shifts at the hospital because that was who she was at her core, a doctor who healed people. But she also thought about James Crawford and Shanice Williams and Carlos Rodriguez, people who had been mistreated by Officer Mitchell and had gotten no justice, people whose complaints had been dismissed, people who had been made to feel like their word meant nothing. If she gave up now, she would be failing them just like the system had failed them before. That evening, Amara returned to the hospital for a scheduled shift. Some of her colleagues looked at her differently now, not because they doubted her medical skills, but because they had seen her on television. They had seen her as the police commissioner, not just as Dr. Johnson the surgeon. It was strange being recognized for something other than her medical work. During her shift, she treated a young black man who had been injured in a minor car accident. He recognized her immediately from the news. "You're that doctor," he said, "the one who got stopped by the police." "That's me," Amara admitted as she examined his injuries. "Thank you," the young man said quietly, "for speaking up, for using your position to make change. My brother was pulled over 3 times last month for no reason. Each time the officers made him get out of the car and searched him. He hasn't done anything wrong. He's a teacher, but he looks suspicious to them, I guess." Amara felt a familiar anger rise in her chest. "That shouldn't happen to anyone." "I'm sorry your brother has experienced that. Maybe now things will get better," the young man said hopefully, "because of what you're doing." "I hope so," Amara said. "I'm certainly going to try." That moment reminded her why this work mattered. It was not about her ego or her pride or getting revenge on Officer Mitchell. It was about creating a system where people did not have to fear the police who were supposed to protect them. It was about making sure everyone was treated with basic human dignity. 3 weeks later, the investigation into Officer Derek Mitchell was complete. Captain Morrison placed the final report on Amara's desk. It was thick, over 200 pages of interviews, evidence, body camera footage analysis, and expert testimony. Amara spent an entire evening reading through every page. The findings were damning. The investigation confirmed that Mitchell had violated multiple department policies during the parking garage incident. He had failed to properly examine identification. He had escalated a non-threatening situation without justification. He had called for backup when no backup was needed. He had treated Amara with disrespect and hostility, based solely on assumptions rather than facts. But it went deeper than that. The investigation team had interviewed James Crawford, Shanice Williams, and Carlos Rodriguez's mother. Their stories were remarkably similar to Amara's experience. Mitchell had approached each of them with immediate suspicion. He had dismissed their explanations. He had treated them as criminals rather than citizens, and in each case his supervisors had failed to take their complaints seriously. The investigators had also examined Mitchell's arrest records. A pattern emerged. Over the past 3 years, Mitchell had stopped and searched Black and Latino individuals at a rate 3 times higher than his fellow officers. His arrest rate was actually lower than average, meaning most of these stops resulted in no charges. He was stopping people who were innocent, wasting their time, humiliating them, and destroying community trust. Most troubling, the investigators had uncovered text messages between Mitchell and several other officers. The messages contained racist jokes, complaints about political correctness, and mocking comments about diversity training. Mitchell had referred to the neighborhood where Carlos Rodriguez lived as those people's territory. He had joked about pulling over suspicious-looking Black drivers as hunting, Amara felt sick reading the messages. This was not just unconscious bias. This was explicit racism that Mitchell had shared openly with colleagues. And none of those colleagues had reported it. They had laughed along. They had participated. The rot went deeper than one bad officer. She called a meeting with Captain Morrison, the city attorney, and the head of human resources. They gathered in her office to discuss the findings and decide on appropriate action. The evidence is overwhelming, the city attorney said. Officer Mitchell violated policy. He engaged in racial profiling. He created a hostile environment. We have grounds for termination. The union will fight it, the HR director warned. They always do. Let them fight, Amara said firmly. We have body camera footage. We have witness statements. We have his text messages. We have a pattern of behavior spanning 3 years. If they want to take this to arbitration or court, we'll win. What about the other officers in those text message chains? Morrison asked. Do we discipline them too? Amara had thought about this carefully. Yes. Anyone who participated in or tolerated racist messages will face consequences. Some will be suspended. Some will be required to undergo additional training. The specific discipline will depend on their level of involvement. But everyone needs to understand that this behavior is unacceptable. That could be a dozen officers or more, the HR director said nervously. Then it's a dozen officers or more, Amara replied. I don't care if it's difficult. I don't care if it's unpopular. This department will not tolerate racism, period. The official termination hearing for Officer Mitchell was held 2 days later. It was not open to the public, but union representatives, Mitchell's lawyer, and several witnesses were present. Amara sat on the panel that would make the final decision, along with 2 other senior officials. Mitchell walked in wearing a suit instead of his uniform. He looked older than he had in the parking garage, tired, defeated, but also defiant. He sat down with his lawyer and waited for the hearing to begin. The department's attorney presented the evidence. Body camera footage from the parking garage played on a screen. The footage showed everything Amara had described: Mitchell's aggressive approach, his dismissal of her identification, his hostile tone. Then they played statements from James Crawford, Shanice Williams, and Carlos Rodriguez's mother. Each described their encounters with Mitchell. The similarities were striking. The same aggressive approach, the same assumptions of guilt, the same disrespect. Finally, they presented the text messages. Mitchell's lawyer objected, saying they were private communications, but the objection was overruled. The messages were relevant to his fitness for duty. As they were read aloud, Mitchell shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He knew how bad they looked. When the evidence presentation was finished, Mitchell's lawyer stood up. Members of the panel, Officer Mitchell has served this department for 12 years. He has made countless arrests. He has put criminals behind bars. He has kept this city safe. Yes, he made mistakes in the parking garage incident. He admits that, but he was trying to do his job. He was responding to legitimate concerns about theft in the area. He didn't know Commissioner Johnson was the commissioner. It was an unfortunate misunderstanding, not a fireable offense. What about the pattern of complaints? One of the other panel members asked. What about the text messages? The complaints were investigated at the time and found to be unsubstantiated, the lawyer argued. As for the text messages, yes, they were inappropriate. Officer Mitchell regrets them. But private messages between colleagues, even offensive ones, should not be grounds for termination. They're evidence of bias that directly affected his job performance, Amara said. Officer Mitchell didn't just tell racist jokes. He acted on racist beliefs when he stopped and searched innocent people. When he profiled citizens based on their skin color. When he treated me like a criminal in the parking garage. The text messages prove that his actions weren't just mistakes. They were the result of deep-seated prejudice. Mitchell's lawyer started to respond, but Mitchell held up his hand to stop him. He stood up and looked directly at Amara. Commissioner Johnson, I want to say something, Mitchell said. His voice was quiet but steady. Go ahead, Amara said. I'm sorry for what happened in the parking garage. I truly am. I made assumptions I shouldn't have made. I didn't listen when I should have. I treated you disrespectfully. Mitchell paused. But I want you to know that I don't think I'm a racist. I have black friends. I've worked with black officers. I don't hate anyone because of their skin color. Amara had heard this defense before, so many times before. Officer Mitchell, having black friends doesn't mean you can't be racist. Working with black officers doesn't mean you don't have bias. Racism isn't just about hatred. It's about the assumptions you make. The way you treat people differently based on how they look. The fact that you see a black woman in a nice car and immediately think criminal instead of successful professional. That's racism, whether you want to admit it or not. Mitchell looked down. I was trained to be suspicious. To look for things that don't fit. That's what they taught us at the academy. They taught you to be observant, Amara corrected. They didn't teach you to let prejudice override evidence. They didn't teach you to dismiss valid identification. They didn't teach you to send racist text messages to your colleagues. You made those choices yourself. The hearing continued for another hour. More evidence was presented. More arguments were made. Finally, the panel went into private deliberation. It took them less than 30 minutes to reach a decision. When they returned, Amara delivered the verdict. Officer Derek Mitchell, this panel has reviewed all the evidence and heard all the arguments. We find that you violated department policy on multiple occasions. You engaged in racial profiling. You failed to treat citizens with respect and dignity. You created a hostile work environment through your communications with fellow officers. Based on these findings, your employment with this police department is terminated effective immediately. Mitchell's face went white. His lawyer started to object, but Mitchell just nodded slowly. He stood up, shook his lawyer's hand, and walked out of the room without another word. The union filed a grievance the next day as expected. They challenged the termination. They argued that the discipline was too harsh. They demanded arbitration. The city attorney assured Amara that they had a strong case, but the legal battle would likely drag on for months. Let it drag on, Amara said. Mitchell is not coming back to this department. I don't care how long the union fights. The other officers who had been implicated in the text messages received their discipline over the following weeks. 2 were suspended without pay for 30 days. 5 were required to complete intensive bias training and were placed on probation. 3 were demoted. And 1 officer, who had been particularly active in sharing racist messages, was also terminated. The police union was furious. They held press conferences denouncing Amara's actions. They claimed she was punishing officers for exercising free speech. They said she was making it impossible for officers to do their jobs. Some conservative media outlets picked up the story and criticized her reforms as going too far. 6 months after the parking garage incident, Amara held another press conference. This time the news was positive. She presented data showing that citizen complaints about racial profiling had dropped by 40%. Community trust in the police, measured by surveys, had increased significantly. Officer morale among officers who supported the reforms was improving. Several officers had come forward voluntarily to report colleagues who engaged in biased behavior, showing that the culture was changing. Change doesn't happen overnight, Amara told the reporters. We still have work to do. We still have officers who resist these reforms. We still have citizens who don't trust us. But we're moving in the right direction. We're building a department that serves all citizens equally, a department that treats everyone with dignity and respect, a department that holds itself accountable. A reporter raised her hand. Commissioner, looking back at that night in the parking garage, do you have any regrets about how you handled the situation? Amara thought about this. I regret that it happened at all. I regret that Officer Mitchell's biases were allowed to go unchecked for so long. I regret that other people experienced what I experienced, but didn't have the power to demand change. But as for my response, no. I used my position to create real accountability and real reform. I turned a terrible experience into an opportunity to make things better. That's what leadership is supposed to do. Life slowly returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be. Amara continued working at the hospital, treating patients and saving lives. She continued serving as police commissioner, overseeing the department and pushing for continued improvement. The 2 roles were exhausting, but they also balanced each other. Medicine reminded her why public service mattered. Police work reminded her that healing happened in many forms, not just in operating rooms. One evening, almost a year after the incident, Amara was walking to her car after a hospital shift. It was the same parking garage, the same level, almost the same time of night. For a moment, she felt a flash of anxiety remembering that night, but then she saw a police officer patrolling the area. It was Officer Chen, the one who had tried to de-escalate the situation with Mitchell. Chen recognized her and walked over. Commissioner Johnson. Good evening. Good evening, Officer Chen, Amara said. How are you? I'm good, ma'am. I wanted to thank you, actually. Chen looked sincere, for everything you've done this past year. The training, the reforms. It's made a real difference. I feel like I'm part of a department I can be proud of now. That's what I wanted to hear, Amara said with a smile. Thank you for your service, Officer Chen. Thank you for being the kind of officer this city deserves. As Amara drove home that night, she thought about how far they had come. Officer Mitchell was gone. The racist officers who enabled him were disciplined or gone. New policies were in place. New training was standard. A new culture was emerging. The work was not finished. It would never be truly finished. But progress had been made. Real measurable progress. She thought about the young man in the emergency room who had thanked her. She thought about James Crawford and Shanice Williams and Carlos Rodriguez. She thought about all the people who would be treated better by police because of these changes. That made everything worthwhile. The humiliation, the legal battles, the criticism, the hard work. It was all worth it to know that fewer people would experience what she had experienced. Amara Johnson had been given a unique opportunity. She had been personally victimized by the very system she was in charge of reforming. She could have handled it quietly. She could have demanded a private apology and moved on. Instead, she had used her position and her voice to demand accountability and create lasting change. She had turned injustice into justice. She had transformed pain into progress, and that, she believed, was what true leadership looked like.